Commissioner White, have you had time to review that language?
Yes, I have, and thank you for taking the break.
So let me, I sat down to write it up in more intelligible manner. Let me go back to footnote 7 and read it back in the record. Commission contemplates that these charges will be subject to change in future rate cases. Commission contemplates that a continuing rate, perhaps an DOS tariff, which is in brand, to capture long-term obligations will be pulled out of the exit fee calculation and collected elsewhere and in a different manner. This concept was provisionally supported by Switch Witness Randy Harris, transcript page 503. And what would become new paragraph 139 is such mechanisms could resolve the concerns identified in this order and assure Switch that it is not paying more than it should, while also assuring that remaining customers will not be burdened with Switch's share of these long-term obligations. Regarding the potential benefits of load growth, the Commission finds that a non-bypassable charge or other mechanism would allow Switch to continue to share in the benefits of such growth along with remaining customers. The Commission contemplates that these benefits could be determined in successive GRC and DAA filings until the long-term obligations expire or are fully amortized. Placement of such non-bypassable charges in a DOS tariff pursuant to an agreement subject to Commission approval could also be considered and analyzed with view to addressing Switch's concerns regarding the extent of the Commission's continuing jurisdiction to subject the executive customer to utilities tariffs. Okay, and I think that is all my suggested modifications to the order in front of you. I would like to say that I think that there's been some misunderstanding about the order. This is not about making Switch stay with utility. It's about getting the terms and conditions right so remaining customers don't pay increased costs when Switch exits. Those fees, charges, terms, or conditions have to be viewed in light of all the system improvements and investments that occurred since 2001, much of which has been approved in a resource plan. And I believe we have to find a better and more sustainable way to capture these costs so that the folks that are leaving aren't harmed and the folks who are staying aren't harmed. And that's kind of what I'm hoping this order does. I recognize that it's a denial, but I really think that given what has happened in the system in the last 15 years, we have to find a better way to make sure that folks who exit aren't harming remaining customers and they still get to exit. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Noble, do you want to go first or do you want me to go?
I'd rather you go first since you have 2 recommendations.
Okay. Chairman, your explanation just now of what the order means to you is helpful because when I read the order, I didn't take it that way. What I felt was a denial with no path forward, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that we have the benefit of hindsight at this point, recognizing, wow, there's a lot of costs that may not be captured. And how do we address that? And I just felt like it was fundamentally unfair to say, hey, you guys staff use a 3-year period, that's wrong. I don't know if 3 years is right, I don't know if 5 years is right, I don't know if 10 years is right, I don't know if a bypassable charge is right. So I just felt it was fundamentally unfair for all the parties that went through this, whether they supported it or not, to not have some kind of an outcome. That's why I selected staff's position, is that it was thoroughly vetted, and yes, it highlighted potential shortcomings with recovery of costs that have been going into rates, but I was trying to have some kind of finality, and then that's why I proposed the adopting staff's analysis or staff's position. I think, and perhaps you can explain what your intent is with paragraph 139. I think there's too many questions unresolved about just automatically adopting a non-bypassable charge. I'm not sure the term other mechanism, but I agree with where you're heading, is that, okay, let's step back and get this right. But I was my intent was, okay, Switch, here's your opportunity. This is the best information that we had in this filing. We recognize the shortcomings. To be fair, we're gonna let you go, but then going forward, we need to address this. And that's why I proposed opening a fast-tracked investigation and rulemaking. And as Ms. DeFazio correctly pointed out, I will not be here to partake in this, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. I just think that there's enough existing questions to, that need to be addressed. Do we need to look at our regulations? I mean, there's, if we're not gonna do a point in time, then is the non-bypassable charge, is that consistent with our general rate making authority? And I can't answer those questions. I don't think that it's appropriate to answer those questions in here, but I think we need a path forward. I took this as almost a circumvention of the statute because it didn't get us to the next step. So those are my impressions and the basis for my proposals.
Okay, well, let me take them one by one. If I could have calculated a non-bypassable charge in this docket, I would have done it. In fact, we spent some time trying to figure that out. It became very obvious that that was not gonna happen. We just didn't have enough evidence in this record to do that. And even if I just didn't think that was fair to switch, number one. We had talked about it at some length in this record, about how we would go about doing that. Plus, it was a briefing item with the legal briefs, Nevada Power staff, BCP, all identified a pretty good path forward, I think. Switch did as well, they identified some concerns they had. I frankly think an investigation probably is not necessary, it's gonna take too much time. We've got folks who switch, I'm sure will wanna come back. Rulemaking takes time. I'm not sure the rule is actually necessary. I think we need a certain flexibility to address specific circumstances. This is a calculation that I believe that if the Nevada Power staff and the BCP go back and figure this out, they can file a tariff to deal with this. They can file it in the next case the switch files and identify what they think the charge should be. My concern with what the easy button would have been to tell Nevada Power to go back as a compliance item, file a tariff that identifies all the charges the switch is currently paying for these costs. There wouldn't be a change in revenue requirement because they're already paying that cost. And put that into a DOS tariff because they're gonna be paying under DOS tariff when they exit. And then we would calculate the reduced exit fee. My problem with that though is I issue a compliance order where the switch does not know what the exit fee is or what the non-bypassable charges are when I issue my order. I'm not sure that's the final order. I have to issue a final order in 150 days. So every time I try to find an exit to fix this problem, I ran into a wall. So the best I can do is basically say, we have a problem, we need to fix it, and we need to fix it fairly for the folks who are exiting and fairly for the people who are going to be staying on the system. And I believe that given the extensive briefing the parties did on this issue, the extensive discussion we had at the hearing, and the stuff we have in the order, I think they have a path forward.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I think that your comments now are helpful, but when I read this, I was left with the distinct impression that there was no way forward. So I think your new paragraph helps, but I still think even have a one workshop investigation to make sure you're going down the right path so that the next applicants don't have to go through what Switch did on the learning curve on this. I just think that's inherently unfair. If there's some proposed language to make it more clear that you are creating a path forward, I think the new 139 helps. But I mean, to me, it's not abundantly clear, but I also didn't sit through the entire case. So I still think greater clarification is probably warranted. And that's just, yeah, you can take that for what it's worth.
Thank you, appreciate it. Did you know what's up to you?
Chairman, I have a question with regards to the DOS tariff and with regards to non-bypassable charges. In your opinion, do we need that before we can make an informed decision on any exit application?
I think we do. I think that people who are going to exit need to know, have some idea before they show up at the hearing. I think the company can figure it out pretty quickly and make a filing with this.
And then, right now, there's a rush to be first in line. Is there, in your opinion, a way to address that so that whether we deal with, have like an open season and everybody that wants to file files and we deal with them all together? or is there some other way so that, one of my concerns is Switch was first, was sort of the pioneer on this second round of exit applications, but presumably if they refile, they're going to be behind everybody else. And I don't know if it's necessarily fair to anybody who's exiting to be at a disadvantage because they filed 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 months, maybe not 2 months, but 2 weeks before or after somebody else. So is there anything in your, having gone through all this and you've spent hundreds of hours thinking about all these issues, is there anything statutorily or within the statutory framework right now that would allow us to sort of even the playing field with regards to those exit applications?
I think there is. And I don't really want to get too much into the other applications that are behind us that are coming up in the pre-hearing conference in June. But I think that, I absolutely agree. I don't think it's just because you filed ahead of somebody else doesn't mean you should get a better deal. At the end of the day, if it looks like 400 megawatts we're leaving the system, we have to attach a little common sense to what happens with that. So if 400 megawatts are looking to leave the system, we need to find out what that system impact is for that amount in total. And I think that that's the only way to ensure that we do what's right with remaining repairs and the folks who have filed, understanding that it's inherently unfair to expect that you're going to get a better deal just because you filed 2 or 3 days ahead of somebody else.
Do you think that holding a workshop within the next month to sort of vet these issues would help provide some clarity?
I don't think it would hurt. I mean, I'm not sure, the concern that I have is that if we hold a workshop, it'd be nice to have a conversation. Well, first of all, we got to notice that that's going to be another 30 days out, so at least 30 days. And we can certainly hold a workshop and have a discussion. And so the folks who are engaged in this process, in Switch, can come and talk to us about what they're concerned about, and we can tell them sort of our vision of what we would be going forward. Now, the question I have is, would it need to be noticed for all 3 of us, or just a presiding officer?
Well, I would think just the presiding officer, I can always read the transcript. And if there are questions that I have, I'm sure the policy advisors would ask those.
Okay, we can do that. I guess I'm a little concerned about rulemaking because I really think that this is really the first exit application we've had in 15 years where it's gone to hearing. And the flexibility allowed us in the statute and regulations. If we had in the regulation, you have to do a 3-year exit analysis, look where we would be. So I'm not sure that a regulation is the answer. But I do think that there's some value in having everybody in a room and having a conversation.
Chairman, can I just interject right there? I wasn't necessarily, my first and foremost suggestion is to do an investigation as quickly as possible so you can have the opportunity to have those discussions, not necessarily leading to a rulemaking. So I believe noticing requirements in just an investigation and not a formal rulemaking process, I think you could do it in less than 30 days. But I'm getting general counsel, a nod from a general counsel. So I just think rather than us trying to identify everything here, maybe that holding a workshop quickly will help, and also you could authorize us opening an order or opening a new docket. Don't put me as the presiding officer, and we could do that in this docket so we can have a quick path forward. So just an observation I want to share.
Okay, all right. And I'm willing to do that.
And that, Chairman, I actually agree with your order, with the proposed modifications and the discussion today with regards to a workshop. My concern is, when I read the order, the first question that came to mind is, well, what do we do next now? And how do we do that? Because there's still a lot of unanswered questions in my mind with regards to vetting this information. And I don't know whether or not from this order, the next application that will come up for commission review and consideration will have made it far enough just from the discussion today and the discussion and decision in the order. So to the extent that we can move forward quicker with a more robust discussion with all stakeholders, I would prefer that. Obviously, there are still other applications out there. If those folks want to continue to pursue those, they have every right to do that. And we'll see where those go if and when they come before us for discussion and action.
So would, Commissioner Wagner and Commissioner Noble, would you contemplate having a finding in this matter to open investigation and hold a workshop immediately after the noticing period?
Could you say that one more time?
Make a finding, or in the conclusion, after paragraph 141, to, based on the discussion of the agenda, that we open an investigation and hold a workshop immediately after the notice period.
You know, I think this might be something for Ms. Tanner, but I think we can do, not necessarily in this docket, because this docket is a application specifically for Switch. And I think given the process and procedure regulations that Commissioner Wagner worked through and we approved, that we can fast track a new investigation very quickly with the revised noticing requirements.
All right. So it doesn't need to be part of this order then, you don't think?
It would, the directive would be in this order, but it would be separate and apart from this order, from this docket.
Okay. Yes, we
So the directive is to open a new docket, and then, okay.
So the only thing would be, in this order, would be the directive to open a new docket, and then, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and put the directive into this. Anything else?
And I'll just, I still think it's fundamentally unfair to say that there's not enough information. I think we could rely on the information that is in the docket. I think we could have picked a number, and it's just a fairness issue for me. So I'm gonna dissent on, I have my list of paragraphs, I'm not gonna go through that, but I still think that it's, we could have done it, I don't know, just determining that a 3-year analysis after the fact wasn't appropriate, you know, what is, it's changing the rules midstream, and I can't support that. So I really, really appreciate you taking into consideration my recommendation to have a path forward. It's not gonna be easy, but I think that is ultimately the best outcome. So just wanted to share those thoughts.
And Commissioner Wagner, I just wanted to respond to that. In reviewing the information for this docket, I don't have enough information to make an informed decision that staff's $27 million is reasonable. To me, the key is looking at the exiting customer and remaining customers, and making sure there's no harm, there's no benefit for either one. And I don't have enough information to know that we can do that here. And so I just, especially with the issue, the non-bypassable charges out there, I think that is something that should be looked at wholeheartedly. I'm not totally convinced that that's the way to go, but there certainly seems to be a need for dialogue on that. We're in a very different situation than we were 10, 12 years ago when we were last reviewing exit applications in Southern Nevada. And so I think it requires a different analysis. The law is the same, the legislative intent is the same, but the landscape is different, which requires a wholly different analysis with regards to the harms and benefits for both exiting customers and remaining customers.
Okay, ready to make a motion then? I move we deny the amended application and issue the order as modified by the modifications, and including the directive that we discussed today, and issue the order.
Second.
And I'll concur in part and dissent in part.
Item 2C is brought to us by Commissioner Noble.
Item 2C is docket number 14-10018, as the rulemaking to address alternatives to the current loss revenue adjustment mechanism. Have before you a proposed temporary regulation, and be happy to entertain any questions or comments you might have.
Any questions or comments?
I have a quick question. In the discussion and findings section on page 3, paragraph 2, you state that parties submitted alternative proposals in support of revenue decoupling. What were the nature of those proposals, and what was your basis of choosing the path that you chose?
The Sierra Club and AimCare were advocating full decoupling, and my premise for not going with those proposals were that I don't think we have statutory authority for full decoupling. BCP had a revenue cap decoupling proposal, and it seemed, in my opinion, very close to a full decoupling, but then at the workshop and hearing, BCP seemed to back off of that proposal. And so that was, again, statutory authority, and then the fact that they seem to be backing off of that, only not to recommend that proposal. Staff's was sort of a building off of the Southwest gas model, but to me it ended up being even more complicated than the LRAM process that we have right now. And my whole thought process in going through this was to try and simplify this and make it easy to implement and easy to understand. And that's why I went with the annual multiplier method that MD Energy has proposed. What it does, though, is that I think it really puts an emphasis on the Commission's vetting of the DSM programs. And so when those come up in future cases, at least from my position, I'm going to be looking really carefully at the MMD protocols and making sure that we've got the best programs out there. Marginal programs, I would personally have, I would be looking at those with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that they're worthwhile, because of the way that if this regulation is approved, it changes the recovery method and puts it more, basically not based on performance, it's based on investment, and so we got to make sure that the investments are appropriate and that the programs are really good.
Okay, thank you. And I would agree that this seems to be a vast improvement to the previous methodology, which in my opinion was a nightmare. I disagree that we don't have the authority to do decoupling, because we did a form of it back in the 90s to start creating these incentives, but this is a step in the right direction, and I would encourage making sure that all of our cost tests for DSM, if we use that we use the best going forward, make sure we're dialed in on those appropriately, just based on this new methodology. It's not my issue, so I'm just offering little words of wisdom for the future. So thank you for the explanation.
All right. I would move that we adopt the proposed regulations as temporary regulations and issue the appropriate order.
Second.
Concur?
Item 2D is brought to us pursuant to section 252 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. It can be ordered upon without any further discussion unless any commissioner has questions or comments.
I have none.
I have none.
In no request, I move that we grant the joint petition, approve the amendment, and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 3A is brought to us by hearing officer Lomoho. Mr. Lomoho.
Item 3A is docket number 14-09008, the rulemaking to reflect changes to the Economic Development Electric Rate Rider Program set forth in Assembly Bill 1 of the 28th, 2014 special session of the Nevada Legislature. The order before you recommends adoption of the temporary regulations previously adopted as permanent regulations.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
I would move we approve the hearing officer's proposed order as filed, adopt the proposed regulations as permanent regulations, and issue the order.
Second.
Concur.
Items 4A and 4B are brought to us by general counsel and can be voted on without any further discussion. The city commission wants to pull an item out for further consideration.
No, thank you.
I have none.
I would then move that the commission accept the recommendations contained in general counsel's briefing memos regarding items 4A and 4B and issue the appropriate orders.
Second.
Concur.
Items 5A, 6A, and 7A are brought to us by regulatory operations staff and can be voted on without further comment, and the city commission wants to pull an item out for further consideration.
I don't, but I thought 7A was brought to us by our soon-to-be departed executive director.
So let me redo that. 5A, 6A are brought to us by regulatory operations staff and can be voted on without further comment, and the city commission wants to pull an item out for further consideration.
No, thank you.
I have none.
I move the commission accept the recommendations contained in staff's briefing memos regarding items 5A and 6A and issue the appropriate orders.
Second.
Concur.
Item 7A is brought to us by our executive director and can be voted on without further comment unless the commission wants to pull it out for consideration.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I move then the commission accept the recommendations contained in the executive director's memo regarding item 7A and issue the appropriate order.
Second.
Concur.
Item 8A is public comment and general public on any topic that is jurisdictional to the commission. Any members in Carson City?
Yep, Fred Bolts.
Record, Fred Volz. On June 8th, NVE filed its monthly report of reliability statistics under docket number 15-0-1001. The statistics provided aggregate outage information between NVE's northern and southern operations. They provide no specificity about chronic outage locations, nor do they suggest what actions will be taken to make permanent improvement in serial outage locations. Don't ratepayers deserve to know if they are in a service territory that ranks among the lowest in reliability? Don't those same ratepayers deserve to know what the monopoly electricity provider is doing to fix the problem? Glenbrook and the Lake Tahoe Basin has battled such problems for years. Only with the residents' complaint to the PUC has there been movement to fix the problem. Ratepayers should not have to take the initiative to ensure they have reliable electricity service. Shouldn't NVE be required to post on its website each month the 10 areas with the most frequent reliability problems and accompanying statistics documenting the specific nature and duration of those outages in both the North and South service territories? Also listed should be a stated plan of action and projected time frame to fix these problems. Ratepayers deserve to know the reliability or intermittent nature of their electric service. The government monopoly has no plausible excuse for withholding this information from its captive customers. Thank you.
I have no other cards for public comment.
I have 3. Mr. Fazio.
For the record, Angel Fazio. I skimmed through the TOU trial study just recently submitted. I have to give NV Energy credit for a very well-designed study. Can't find fault with it. Now, the active participation results were not very complimentary to the longevity of this program. The promises made to get this trial enacted and promised results apparently have not lived up to their full potential. Nor are the non-participating ratepayers happy that in order to get participants to answer survey questions, they had to be bribed to the tune of over $33,000. Which if NVE runs true to form will be passed on to us and approved by the PUC. The second volume with closing remarks was not overwhelmingly favorable to the program, especially regarding summer participation and the long-time savings versus comfort. comments range from discomfort to miserable to bill shock. Of note was page 55 of 344, where it's stated, but they are all understandable given that the choose when you use TOU and CPP rates were not designed with customer adaptation in mind. Then why did they keep using behavior modification rhetoric to endorse TOE if the end goal was not to have the customer adapt? Also, are there any tentative dates scheduled for the annual consumer sessions?
Yes, Mr. Fox reviewed that information.
Okay, thank you.
Arlene Chan?
Hi, I'm a local high school, public high school teacher, and I'm coming to you from the standpoint of what I'm teaching my kids in class and how they feel about solar energy and what's going on. I teach the AP environmental science kids, and when I taught them about the carbon emissions that are going on, it's just appalling. So they came up with a program to try and get solar panels at our high school. And they did all this work for about a year, and it all came down to Nevada Energy won't let us. They won't let us have solar panels. And it all has to do with everyone that is voting on this. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that we're producing 42 million tons of carbon dioxide at our school alone. Carbon dioxide emissions, not just carbon dioxide. And nobody will let us stop doing it. We're trying to save our environment. And these kids are really dedicated. They have given presentations, and they're 16 and 17-year-olds, and they just want to be heard, and it just doesn't make sense in my view. And one of my students said, if I want to grow vegetables in my backyard and feed my family, I shouldn't have to pay fees to the grocery store, right? And that's the same thing with energy. We want to get our own energy, so why do we have to pay Nevada Energy fees? It doesn't make sense. And so in their presentation, they did present to the Board of Trustees Carolyn Edwards, and she is trying to, I mean, it's just been crazy at the end of the year. She's trying to help us, but I'm sure all of you have gotten letters from them because they've been writing and trying. And this one thing on Switch, I thought I could come and make a statement saying, you know, please help us, our future generations. These kids, they need it. They need a leader to take charge and say, no more carbon emissions, no more global warming. There's not going to be another drought in Nevada. So I just thought I'd come up here.
Ms. Chan. Greg Bass?
Good morning, Chairman Burton Shaw and Commissioners. My name is Greg Bass, and I'm with a company called Noble Solutions out of San Diego, California. I apologize up front for reading from my crib notes, but I'm a rotten public speaker. But I do have something that I would like to offer the Commission in terms of comments regarding the switch exit application. Firstly, Noble Solutions, for retail energy supplier, as I stated, we serve commercial and industrial end-use customers in 16 states, District of Columbia, Baja California, Mexico. We serve more than 15,000 retail customers, and our aggregate load is greater than 4,500 megawatts. Here in Nevada, we currently serve natural gas customers. We did file earlier in the year in a motion to intervene in this proceeding. While the motion was denied, I want to thank you, Commissioners, for the ability to and the opportunity to participate as a commenter. I think the issue here for Noble Solutions Solutions has to do with the definition of a reasonable impact fee. And from going through everybody's filed testimony, it was obviously a very controversial subject. Parties in the proceeding agree that a portion of the utility revenue requirement representing PAC's costs, subject to amortization, should continue to be paid as an impact fee. And I also read that the parties also agree that costs related to policy-driven programs should be included in the impact fee. However, after that, there's considerable debate as to what should be included in impact fees. And I would say that both Nevada Power and the Bureau of Consumer Protections would be in agreement with me that the commission should take on the task of providing clear guidance and rules for setting the impact fee in light of the current industry conditions. And so I come here at Noble Solutions, urge the commission to, whether it's part of this switch exit fee exit application, or as part of a future rulemaking, that you take up this concept of the impact. And so thank you very much for your time, and I also thank you for the little extra time that you gave me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. That would be all the questions I'll take us.
Chairman,
Yes.
could we return just briefly to item 7A?
Yes.
On that, just to clarify, the commission need only accept the assessment recommendation. There would be no resulting order. I just want to make that clear.
Should we do any motion?
Yeah, why don't you just redo it and just say that you accept the assessment?
Okay. So
Thank you.
let's move that the commission accept the recommendations contained in the executive director's memo regarding item 7A.
Second.
Concur.
Thank you for that, Ms. Tanner. Now we're adjourned.